Is it possible to use advanced level grammar without understanding it? You might not agree with my answer, but I think yes, it is possible. I've been teaching English for over 20 years, and what I've noticed is that lots of people naturally use cleft sentences without even realizing it. Interestingly, grammar books and language exams consider cleft sentences to be advanced, but in my opinion, they're not that difficult to produce. So, if you want to impress someone with a different style of sentence structure, then stick around because that is what we are going to practice today. So, of course, this video is going to include an introduction to cleft sentences. Specifically, we are going to look at WH what cleft sentences. We're also going to level up your vocabulary with lots of C1 level vocabulary and some collocations. And we're going to just review a few things from previous videos like relative clauses, reduced relative clauses, some phrases to speculate, and as always, what I'll do is start out easy and then make it more difficult, adding vocabulary and extra tips along the way. So feel free to jump to other chapters that catch your eye, but don't miss the review points because those are quite important to review things. Let's go. Before we start, don't forget this is an interactive session. So what I'd like you to do is pause the video as we go and just write down your own answers. By the way, for those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Anissa and I'm kind of a grammar nerd. So much so that what I try and do is squeeze grammar into almost all of my videos. And I love analyzing the grammar in the examples that I give you. So if that sounds good, please check out my other videos because today we're actually going to be building on what I have mentioned previously. So today we are taking a look at another photo from the news, and today's photo is this. And the question, as always, is what do you see? So take a minute, and what I would like you to do is write down any words, phrases, vocabulary that comes to mind. I'll see you in a minute. The question is, what do you see? And we're going to work on this together and make it more and more difficult. Let's start really easy. I see a man. Okay, but what is he doing? Can you try and use a relative clause to add some information about the action? So I would say, I see a man who is pulling a boat. Now, I've got that little comma there because this is just extra information. It's not a defining clause. There's only one man in the photo, so I'm not going to confuse him with any other people. And I'm using the relative pronoun who because I'm describing that man, that person. And of course, I asked you, what is he doing? So you can match that tense from the question, what is he doing? I see a man who is pulling a boat. Great. But now, can you describe the boat? What type of boat is it? Can you add an adjective to do this? And my hint here is I've given you an. That article is indicating that your adjective has got to start with a vowel. So what do you think? I see a man who is pulling an inflatable boat. Great adjective, meaning I am able to, I can inflate this item. So we've described this boat as being inflatable, which is great, but it's time to level up vocabulary and use a very specific term. And this is the term dinghy. Dinghy. There are a couple of different pronunciations for this. In the UK, a lot of people say dinghy, dinghy. I'm more American with this word, and I tend to say dinghy, dinghy. And what is a dinghy? Well, it's the boat that we're describing in the photo. So a boat that's really small, it could be inflatable, doesn't have to be. It's normally used for pleasure if you're out on a lake just boating around, or it could be used to transfer passengers from a great big ship. Maybe they're just going on a little excursion to an island and they'd get into a dinghy, go to the island, and then be transferred back to the boat. So, good term to use, but we've got to be careful. Now, I say you've got to be careful, and what you should be careful about is your spelling. Because if you accidentally forget that H, two things happen. First of all, the sound changes, and now we've got that j sound, like just, June, joy. So it changes from dingy to dingy. And the word form now, it's not a noun anymore. It's now turned into an adjective. So of course, it has a totally different meaning. And we're looking at something that means quite dark, dirty, not cared for. It's often used to describe places. Think of a hotel room. The hotel room was pretty dingy, but that was to be expected considering how cheap it was. Now we've got, I see a man who is pulling an inflatable dinghy. Great sentence, but can you make this more concise? And my tip here is use a reduced relative clause. I mentioned this in my other videos. If you haven't seen them, check them out. Pause the video and think about it. And we end up with, I see a man pulling an inflatable dinghy. Let's keep going and add even more detail and information. This time, I want you to think, what does the dinghy contain? And you can use another relative clause for this. Take a minute and think. So I see a man pulling an inflatable dinghy which contains household items. Note that I'm using a different relative clause now. Now I'm using which, not who. Because now what I'm describing is an object, not a person. Yes, we could reduce this as well, but that might start to get a little bit confusing, and our aim is to communicate clearly. What we don't want to do is confuse people. So let's keep the sentence as, I see a man pulling an inflatable dinghy which contains household items. But are you sure that's what they are? So I'd like you now to think about my other videos. If you haven't seen them, that's okay. I want you to add any words or phrases, anything to indicate that you are speculating. You're not sure. So take a minute and think how you would indicate that you are speculating. So I see a man pulling an inflatable dinghy which appears to contain household items. There are lots of different ways that you can speculate, so if you have said something different, that is fine. Just leave me a note in the comments because I'm curious to know how you added your speculation to this. Now, if you know me, you'll know that I love prepositions, so could you add a little prepositional phrase onto the end of this to tell me where this guy is? Where is he walking? So what we have achieved so far is to improve our first sentence, I see a man, to now read, I see a man pulling an inflatable dinghy which appears to contain household items through a flooded area. Wow, this is a really long, really detailed sentence, and I absolutely love it. So for anyone wondering what's going on with all of these numbers appearing on the screen today, what it represents is the number of cleft sentences I've used in this video. Don't pause the video and go back and try and find them all, because that's what we're going to focus on now. We're going to have a look at the grammar and the sentence structure used in those clef structures. If you get bored at looking at examples of cleft sentences, then just jump to the next chapter. And as always, if you are enjoying this video, please give me a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. So let's look at some examples. What it represents is the number of cleft sentences I've used in this video. There are lots of different ways of making cleft sentences. Today we are focusing on the WH cleft structure, and more specifically using what. I've chosen this just because it is a very common one to use, and you probably already use it without realizing. So let's find that what, because that is going to be the beginning of the structure. And in this case, I put it at the beginning of the sentence. What? Then I need a subject and verb, what it represents. In cleft structures, we then have the verb to be, and for a nice formal cleft structure, we should consider this as the third person singular. So, what it represents is. What it represented was. Yes, you will hear people saying are and were, but it's considered more informal. And then at the end of the structure, that's where we've got our emphasized information, what we really want to focus on. You already know that it represents something. You're waiting to find out, well, what? What it represents is the number of cleft sentences I've used in this video. In the next examples, I'd like you to pause and just try and find the cleft structure. Pause the video and try and find the cleft. Did you find it? So I started the sentence, I've been teaching English to adults for over 20 years, and now I'm putting the cleft structure in there. And what I've noticed is that lots of people naturally use cleft sentences. Now, you don't have to put that here, because lots of people is actually the subject of use cleft sentences. It's optional, but I said it. Let's try another one. Pause and try and find the cleft. As always, what I'll do is start out easy, then make it more difficult, adding vocabulary and extra tips along the way. You've got the hang of it now, so pause the video, find the cleft. This is an interactive session, so what I'd like you to do is pause the video as we go along and write down your answers. So here I'm just showing you that you can use this with a range of different verb tenses. You can put in modals as well. So what I would like you to do is, it doesn't matter if you're talking about the past or the present or the future. Try the next one. Pause and find the cleft. Was it more difficult because I removed that help? I think you could do it. So I'm kind of a grammar nerd, so much so that what I try and do is squeeze grammar into almost all my videos. These should be getting easier, and I hope you're paying attention because you're going to be giving me your own in a moment. So what do you think about this sentence? Take a minute, and what I would like you to do is write down any words and phrases, any vocabulary that comes to mind. Oh, this is a really nice example. Not only is it hiding in the middle of the sentence, but I've actually put it into a conditional. If you are doing any kind of language exam, what you should be careful about is your spelling. Because if we remove the H, two things happen. Beautiful. There's just a couple more, so I hope these are getting really easy now. Can you find the cleft sentence in this? Okay, so I'm using a different relative clause, which, because now what I'm describing is an object, not a person. Now, that final little tag at the end, some people could consider it part of the cleft, but it isn't really. That's just extra information. What I'm describing is an object, not a person. This is a really nice example because you might have heard it in business meetings when someone says, well, what we don't want to do is, and you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, what is the solution? What do we need to do? So, very commonly used. What we don't want to do is to confuse people. Now, you can use the infinitive verb there. You can put to. You don't have to. You can just use the base. It's flexible, so choose the structure that you like. And the last very long one is, so what we've achieved so far is, to improve our answer, I see a man, to now read, I see a man pulling an inflatable dinghy, which appears to contain household items through a flooded area. All right, guys, I have given you a lot of different examples, and now it's your turn to start practicing them. So we're going to start with a normal sentence, and then we're going to change it into a cleft sentence, add detail, and make it more beautiful. Let's go. So our normal sentence that we're starting with, I see a man. Think about the cleft structure that we're going to use. We're going to keep this one nice and easy. And what will you say instead? What I see is a man. What I see is a man. So we talked about what the man was doing. I see a man pulling a boat. Okay, so I know that you see something. That information is already known to me. What we need to add here is the new information. That's what you see. So put that in the sentence. What I see is a man pulling a boat. What I see is a man. What I see is a man pulling a boat. What I see is a man walking through water. So you can have a phrase with a preposition there as well. That final tail can get quite long, as you saw in my previous examples. And now it's time to level up your vocabulary again. So let's use the verb to wade. Wade. It's a regular verb, wade, waded, waded. And it just means when you're walking through some kind of liquid, but there's a lot of effort involved. So maybe you're in a river and the current is quite strong, or maybe you're in the sea, but you keep getting stuck in the sand as you walk. So that's the idea of wading. Oh, I will never forget my best friend wading out to the middle of the lake to get my scarf that had blown in. True story. So let's make our sentence nicer and now say, what I see is a man wading through water. Ooh, beautiful. But to make your life difficult, I'm going to tell you that wade through something can also be a phrasal verb. So when it is a normal verb, we're just talking about walking through liquid, water. But as a phrasal verb, it means going through something that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and normally it's got the idea that you're reading. It could be that you're going through lots of data, or you're going through lines of computer code trying to find the error. So answer this question for me. Do you wade through the terms and conditions before downloading a new app? Do you? Well, what very few people do is wade through the terms and conditions before downloading a new app. Oh, look at that example of a cleft sentence, just in case you have not had enough examples already. So I think it is time for a challenge, and I've got quite a difficult one for you. I asked the question, do you wade through the terms and conditions before downloading a new app? And now I'd like you to pause this video and unscramble the sentence below to answer that question. I've included a WH clef, I've included the phrasal verb wade through, and I've included another nice phrase as well. Pause the video. Good luck. Did you do it? Let's see. Honestly, what I can't be bothered to do is wade through the terms and conditions before downloading a new app. Don't forget, I said that to in the infinitive is optional. And here, I only gave you 1 to, so you couldn't put it in that spot. Honestly, what I can't be bothered to do is wade through the terms and conditions before downloading a new app. You should. It's very good. It's useful information. And just so that you don't get confused when you're watching TV or movies in English, especially American English, Wade can also be a man's name. Just to confuse you even more. So we've got to wade through water, we've got to wade through terms and conditions, and we've got, hey Wade, hi, how's it going? Great. Could be a person as well. So let's go back to all the notes that you had earlier on what you see in this picture. We started off with, I see a man pulling a boat. But now we can add all of that detail to a cleft sentence. What do you think? What will your cleft sentence look like? I've gone. What I see is a man wading through a flooded area with his personal possessions piled on an inflatable dinghy. Now, I'm sure yours looks a little bit different. That's fine. Just leave me a comment so I can check it out. Is it time to level up your vocabulary again? Yes, it is. And this time I'd like to look at the word laden. Laden. This is an adjective and it just means when something is carrying or holding a lot of different things that are probably quite heavy. Think of a table at a birthday party or at Christmas time and it's laden with lots of different food and dishes and cakes and maybe presents. Or a traveler laden with luggage. I'm imagining a backpacker with extra bags, maybe a suitcase as well. Or a tree growing in your garden and hopefully it is laden with apples or apricots or pears or mangoes or whatever is on your tree. A lot of my students ask me, Anissa, is this word B2? Anissa, is this word C1? It doesn't work like that. We've got a lot of words in English that can be used in different contexts. So yes, laden is a great word. You're not going to find somebody at a B1 level using the word laden. But if you really want to push it up to a higher level, then instead of looking at it from the point of view of being physical, the tree was laden with fruit, that's very physical, We could use it in the context meaning that you are burdened by something and it's just something that's very unpleasant. We often use this to talk about debt. So many university students are laden with debt by the time they graduate. Unfortunate, but true. So it's not about the specific word, it's about the context that you're using it in. That's going to determine what level it is. So our lovely sentence now reads, what I see is a man wading through a flooded area and pulling an inflatable dinghy laden with his personal possessions. If you're still using the term household items or household goods or personal items, all of those are fine. But are you sure? Are you sure that's what's in the dinghy? I think we need to add some speculation to this. How are you going to add speculation? Remember, there are lots of different ways to do this, so you could just put in what appears to be. So what I see is a man wading through a flooded area and pulling an inflatable dinghy laden with what appears to be his personal possessions. Remember, lots of different ways of doing this. This is not the only correct way. It's just one option. Now, in my videos, I always ask, what do you think might have happened to result in this current situation that we're looking at in this photo? But in this case, I think it's quite obvious. So what obviously happened? What do you think must have happened? Pause this video and I'd like you to try and complete these sentences. You can use the same idea for each sentence. That's fine. We're just focusing on using this structure because what we're looking at now is combining the idea of speculation into a cleft structure. Beautiful. Hopefully you have got some lovely examples, and if not, you can follow along with mine because we're just looking at some easy ones at the moment. So, what has obviously happened is that there was a flood. What I think must have happened is that there was a flood. So in both of these, I am really sure I cannot think of any other things that could have resulted in a situation like this. But in number 3, I'm using presume. Presume. We looked at this in my other video about the cherry blossom tree and the difference between assuming and presuming things. Remember, if you presume something, you've got a high probability that you are right. So in this case, I don't know for sure, but I really think it's a good guess. What I presume must have happened is that people were forced to evacuate from their homes. You can evacuate a place or evacuate from a place. The point is they didn't really want to do this. They had to. At least that's what I think. Now, we could make these examples a little bit more difficult in terms of the vocabulary and collocations we put in. For example, what has obviously happened is that Mother Nature unleashed a flood of epic proportions. So this has got some nice phrases in it. For example, to unleash a flood. A flood is a very powerful force of nature, so you would unleash something powerful. We're referring to Mother Nature, which is the perfect term in this case because we're talking about weather, specifically weather disasters. And a flood of epic proportions. We could have said a big flood, a really big flood, a massive flood. But when we say epic, that is saying a huge scale. We often use this as a joke. If somebody has made a really big mistake at work, you'd say, that was an epic disaster. Or epic fail, all over social media. Epic fail, total disaster. getting really difficult now. Take a look at this one. What I think must have happened is that Mother Nature once again served up a monumental flood to remind us mere humans that she is the most formidable force on Earth. Wow, lots of things to look at here. We've got the idea of Mother Nature, and I'm referring to her as she. She is the most formidable force on Earth. We often use the term a force to be reckoned with. So that's the idea of something formidable. To serve up, you normally serve food, but if you serve up a disaster, that's also kind of connecting to the idea of Mother Nature. Oh, and then a monumental flood, another way of saying a flood of epic proportions. So we're focusing on the size of this. Now, I am referring to humans, us humans, as mere humans. What do you think that means? Because we've got the idea of Mother Nature and this huge, powerful force compared to us humans, us mere humans. So in this case, I'm emphasizing how small we are, how insignificant we are. We are only humans in comparison to Mother Nature. So you might use this as a term to refer to time. So, oh, it'll take you a mere 10 minutes to finish your homework, for example. Or, why are you moving a mere 2 kilometers from where you live now? We're just outside the school catchment area, so I really want my son to go to a better high school next year. That's why we're moving a mere 2 kilometers down the road. So after each of these videos, I do hope you go back to the beginning, look at the photo and think, okay, what have we discussed today and how can I improve my answer? We started off with a really easy answer. I see a man. Maybe you said, I see a man and a boat. And now take a look at my final answer. Well, what I see is a man wading through a flooded area. He's pulling an inflatable dinghy, which is laden with what appears to be household goods. I can't say for certain, but what I presume must have happened is that Mother Nature has once again served up a monumental flood to remind us mere humans that she is the most formidable force on Earth. What we can only hope is that the water level recedes soon and that residents are one day able to return to their homes. Wow, I've added quite a few extra details there, but you can see my cleft sentences. You can see some of the collocations we've discussed. I've got some nice phrases of speculation because I'm not sure. And you can see that leveled up vocabulary, wading through the dinghy which is laden with, those lovely relative clauses that are in there. So everything in this answer is what we have already discussed in this video. That's how you can take your first answer and level it up. I really hope that you found this video useful because it was a great introduction to cleft sentences. You might already use them and you didn't even realize that you were using that really nice grammatical structure. What I think is, what I meant was, what I'd like to do next weekend is, you might already use them. So keep practicing them and I will see you in the next video.